Oh, all right. Let's get started again. All right. So we've got our header done. Let's start on the message channel, whatever part. I don't know what they call this. Um, so we don't have a whole lot of text here. Let's do some. All right. So get rid of this. It was really small. So we're gonna have this scrollable section here. We're gonna ignore this bookmark pane that's coming down or whatever. But we got a couple things going on. So that kind of like fades down here behind this. What's going on is like it's kind of the same as what we have with some of our other layouts or whatever. Um, this is a static height or whatever, or maybe sticky, right? And then um, this is like flex one maybe to kind of fill the rest of the vertical space. This is a static height, but they basically took like the text box and it almost looks like they popped some negative top margin on it to get it to like overlap the top of its container. That's what it feels like anyway. And I only say that because you can kind of see the um, the line kind of fade behind it a little bit. So we'll start on it and see what's up. So Tailwind has some sticky classes or whatever we can look at. This will be like in the position utilities. So static, fixed, absolute, relative, sticky. So static, let's see. Okay, so it's kind of like relative, but it keeps it in the flow, and then this absolute child isn't relative to the parent. I don't know when I would use that. Use relative a lot to do this kind of thing, move an absolute child in within it or around. Um, so fixed element relative to the browser window. What's the difference in fixed and sticky? Use a sticky position element as relative until it crosses a specified threshold, then treat it as fixed until its parent is off screen. So I don't know if we want fixed or sticky. We'll start with fixed and see what happens. The other thing is, it could be neither. Let's just start with that. We'll set a fixed height here and just roll with it. And then we'll let this flow and then do like an overflow scroll on it so it scrolls, but we won't do anything fancy with sticky. Like sticky would be more like you start scrolling and this general goes up until maybe it gets to the top of the page and then it starts like it stays. That's not really what's happening here. So looks like this general is the same height as this little widget or whatever. So let's do that. This is where that's going to go if I want to find the height of whack chat. So I'm just going to steal this div real quick. And then we'll change some of this, like the border. Well, border select can maybe stay. Damn, I mean that might be like exactly what we want. Do you want to make this a little bit lighter? Say even lighter. That looks about right. So we'll do hashtag general. All right, and then we'll play around with these. Oh, no, I want this to be a little bit bolder. It's not working, and it's probably because we don't have a weight for that. If you remember when we pulled in Lato, we only pulled in that regular weight. So let's go back to here and let's look at our bold 700 maybe. That's not what I want. Where's my little, where's my window at? I don't get that to come back. There we go. Okay, so we say wait. It's this little dealio here. Yeah, so now it's bold. Okay, so that's what we want. This size straight again. All right. Stop suggesting things. Slack. Let's get this little avatar doohickey here. So, honestly, don't remember what this does if you have multiples. Let's imagine it like takes the last 3 users or something, like overlaps the avatars. For now, we only have the one, so we'll just roll with that. So instead of our little plus here, our pencil, we'll have a button that is going to have a border. It's going to be rounded for sure. I don't think we need this inline flex. And then what if we grab we'll just make like a gray circle to represent the avatar for right now. It's going to be a little bit smaller. Then we'll have a number. And we can flex those. So flex items. Center SpaceX 2. It's probably 1. Alright, so the text needs to be a little bit a little bit smaller, and a little bit lighter. So we'll say text slate 500, no, PG 500. So there's a little more space between them. And then something still looks a little off. It's not as, it's a little taller than it needs to be. So let's do PY1 PX2 maybe. This won't. Yeah, close enough. So there should be a tooltip on this. View all members of this channel. So view all members of this channel. If we wanted to do something where that's like placed below, let's have an example of that we can come back to. So there'll be a, I want the documentation for 6. So that's a Netlify, I have to remember that. I always have to go through that Git repo. Let's see. So placement, let's look at placement. So bottom would be like arrow in the center. Bottom start would like move the tippy to the left, so the arrow's on the left, and bottom end does the opposite. So if we look at, you know, how they have this, it's more of like a bottom end. So if we come back to here and say view tippy placement is bottom end, it'll, let's say like for whatever reason the bottom of the page was here and it couldn't place it here, it'll fall back to something else, but now it's on the bottom, or it'll prefer the bottom. And that's what we want. I'm not going to go through, there were some other ones I noticed as we were kind of going through that were similar to this. I think it was like this new message maybe. Yeah, it's like new message is that way. We want this to be on the bottom, and this would be like straight up bottom because we want it to be in the center. But we'll leave that for future. Okay, so there's a hover effect on this that highlights the whole thing. So we'll say it's going to rounded hover BG slate 200. Probably it's too dark. It is. This is more like a 100 or 50 even. I bet it's 100 will look all right though. Yeah. Let's give it some padding. The top padding actually looked all right, I think. I can give it like a scooch more, but definitely needs some horizontal padding. Yeah, it doesn't need the vertical pattern at all. Almost needs to be a little bit like a little bit skinnier. I took that off the wrong one. I'm gonna take it off this one. Maybe it does. It's like PY 0.5. Yeah. It's a little bit taller. I think it's a font size thing, and possibly like a leading thing. So this looks like just normal font size. Yeah, I don't know, like it, we don't have this weight, so it's not gonna work, but I think if we did have like an 800, which I don't know if we can even do that. Let me say 800. Since we font bold and then extra bold. Can't really tell. So if we said back to text large and then brought the leading down a little bit. See how the padding changes a bit? So this is like scrunched it smaller than that. Stress 6. That's definitely closer to this. I think this is a 50. Because it is like just the whisper of a highlight there. It's not quite right. Like this, the hashtag and the chevron need to be a little bit darker, I think. But it's fine. So now let's do this area. So for that, I do want to come here and get rid of some of this stuff that's not relevant. So this is not a compose message button. This is channel list /who type thing. This is, I think, channel settings is what it ends up being. So if I click here, yeah, it's like channel modal, channel settings modal. Okay, so that's this div. Now we're gonna want another one that takes up space, and then a last one that is our actual chat box. Say this is a BG Red 200 for now, and then its height 32. This doesn't have to be exactly right. We can tune it later. That's probably close. So like when we do our little actual box, we'll give this red box some padding, and then we'll let this flow wherever it does and tell it to kind of give itself negative margin until it creeps above this line. And that'll kind of give the illusion of the text sliding behind the chat box a bit. I think what I'm going to do too is to keep it simple, we'll just focus on the messages, not these breaks between days. This is always something we can go in and add later. The big thing is we just get this scroll action working correctly. So yeah, we are going to want these channel descriptions at the beginning of the channel. So let's do that first in this space. And one thing I want to figure out, there we go. There we go. Okay, so this creates a bunch of text or whatever, but what's happened is like it pushed down here, and we want this to basically stay fixed at the bottom, you know? So I always have to like mess around with this to get it to do what it's supposed to do. You say flexcom height 0 overflow y scroll. That's not doing it. I set the height to like 32. Let's see what happens. So this does what we want. When I do the flex 1, it breaks it. But I almost think we need that. We need it to fill. So I wonder if we did like a nested container here with some of these other dealios on it, what would happen? Okay. So now if we said height 0, max height full. Yeah, that's not working. Let me let's see. Let me pull up Tailwind UI and see how they do some of their things. We'll pull this up off screen because it's a paid product. I don't know, like, some of these are free. I don't know which ones are though. But the page layout examples. This might be it. This might be it. Let's get rid of this, get rid of that. So flex 1, min height 0, auto or overflow. This doesn't look like what we want, for sure. And in the process, it actually looks like we broke this up here somehow, which I'm not even going to try to begin to understand what just happened there. But let's get back to working before we go any further. So here we have that, which that still works. We can lorem 20, and that works. We can lorem 500, and this probably breaks. And it does. Yeah, and it kind of pushes all that up. All right. So it's this amount of text that gives this issue. Let me keep looking. They do put a div container inside of it, but I think this is for like some sticky headers they do. I'm looking at like a scrolling list. I think I find something where they have this, but within they have like a top and bottom cap on the page or something. They literally don't have an example doing this. We probably have the same problem over here on this scroll bar too, honestly. If I could even make the page that small. Because like this should scroll, this left pane should scroll independently as well. I feel like this. Definitely shouldn't be doing this. Like this inside should be scrolling. So that's going to be the probably the blocker for the rest of the night, is getting this little weird interaction to work. So again, if I set a specific height on it, it starts working, it seems like. That's not even working now. What do we change? Oh, it's the flex. So what if I did like min height 0? Let's think. Let's think. All right. Let's say like x1 flex call, min height 0. And then inside of here, we'll do a flex 1 flex call overflow y auto. Nope. I know for a fact the min height's important because it's like it's an old CSS hack to get this like Flexbox full height scrolling stuff to work. Let's Google around for a little bit. So CSS Flexbox full height scroll. Flex property, da da da. This is kind of what we're already doing. Overflow y auto height 0. Let's see what this does. I'll be amazed if this works. It looks like it works. We just need more text. Look at that. Perfect. Stack Overflow, man. These types of like this, you know, you won't have layouts that are this complex in a lot of your apps, But this is probably one of the hardest things to pull off with CSS. I always end up Googling around. One day I'll commit to memory to what's going on here. So like Flex 1 probably breaks it again. Yeah, it does. So you have to remember it's Flex Auto. So 1.1 Auto. What does that even do? Like MDN Flex. It's using like shorthand syntax for sure. Shorthand for grow, shrink, and basis. So 1 value, we're doing 3 value. So it's grow, shrink, then basis. So what is flex basis? So it's the initial main size of a flex item. Size, otherwise a box sizing. Okay. Whatever. So we'll just, you take this for granted, it works. I bet if we didn't have this box down here, then I could use what's in Toe and UI, but they did not have an example where you had a top static element and a bottom, and the middle is flexed and scrolled. So anyway, let's make this a little bit smaller. And it looks like, we've got these effects. You see how this like bleeds to the edge or whatever. You might think, oh, I need to put some padding on there because there's padding here. But when you come back in here and like highlight, you see how like the backgrounds bleed all the way to the edge. So what we're gonna need to do is like in the messages, we'll control the padding. So let's do this kind of banner thing first. I was starting to think that really was going to take us like 30 minutes to figure out. So I'm glad that it didn't. For 3 classes. All right, so this is going to be our channel banner description. And I think this is going to be kind of a repeated element or whatever. You've basically got like, they call this a media object. So you have like an image, a heading, and some text or whatever. So you look at this form, it's almost the exact form as a message. There's just some subtle differences in behavior. So this is a good example of, I could dry this up right now and go ahead and say, well, no, we're going to have a media object component. But then there's little things like this hover effect, and there's text here, and it may be like I can clean up duplication of code, but this is actually 2 different bits of knowledge, you could argue. So I shouldn't dry it up, but I don't need to talk about that too much. So basically we're going to have two elements that are flexed next to one another. The first one's going to be this div that's going to have an icon inside of it. I actually think there is a megaphone hero icon. Let's go look. Speakerphone. Let's say speakerphone. Class width 5 flex shrink 0. And then this will be like padding BG red 200 rounded, something like that. Let's say when we flex it, that'll go away. So the megaphone itself was kind of rich colored, which we're not going to be able to do. Maybe the best we could do is first lighten this up a little bit. I don't even know if we can set like a background on this, like PG white. I doubt it. Yeah, that isn't gonna look right. So in this case, we just roll with it. The best we do is maybe make it like text red 700. but we would actually go grab like a real SVG for this. The next thing's going to be a div that has a few different elements in it. So it'll have a heading. So you're looking at the general channel. And this will be link to general. And then a paragraph. And then another link to edit description. All right, so what we can do is come in here, class, flex. The default, I think, is item start. We'll go ahead and call it out explicitly. And then we'll put some space in between these two. All right, the heading, these font sizes look about the same to me. There's just one that's bolded. So see, this is font semi-bold. And it looks like the text is smaller. And then it wraps, like it has a max width on it. I think text small is too small. We're just gonna have to get over the fact that our base text size is a little bit bigger than what's in Slack. And that's just gonna have to be okay. Kind of want to give this a little bit of, say, letting 5. Then here, a little bit of margin on the bottom, maybe less. Yeah. All right, so let's just, actually we can inspect this and see what their actual box around this looks like. So they have like an extreme amount of top padding to kind of push it around or whatever. We don't have to do exactly that. We can just say this whole banner will we'll use padding to kind of get it situated a little bit. So let's give it an even amount of padding on the left and right. Probably go up to 6. And then we can say padding top like 16. Let's try 12. And then of course, as we scroll, this will go up to the top. Looks like we need to adjust the font color a little bit too. This thing's looking like it wants to come out and stab me. I'm also going to go ahead and grayscale this, because it's freaking me out a little bit. And it looks boring, but it is what it is. If we did slate 200, slate 100, do 200. Yeah, let's text gray 800 this, 600 maybe. It may be also that they're using, we've got a thinner font up here, but this looks a little bit better. This gets back to we never want to use pure black, and that's kind of what I think is kind of standing out to me, is it just kind of punches a little too hard. All right. So we're looking at the general channel. So this is good enough. We need to style these links. In practice, these will be maybe router links. So these will get, we won't have to style them like specifically like we're about to, but text blue, say text blue 800. Looks about right. What? There's probably a different blue that's more grayscale or whatever that might be better, but we'll stick with this. Text blue 800. Actually, this isn't a link. That's funny. Which it makes sense. You're looking at it. So that's not a link. Let's just make it like a span. And we want hover underline. Let's lighten this up just a hair. Cool. All right. So now let's get some messages in here. First, we're going to change this song because, good lord. Let's get just top and bottom 12 on there so that our message should show up, start showing up here. So this is going to be a div. We're going to forget these controls over to the right for now. We're actually going to add a menu like this later to handle deleting. I really don't like the way this looks. And I don't think it's this way in the native app, but this looks so strange to me. They're like trying to build some workflow into this, like where I work. Like if I see somebody like ask for something or whatever, I'll use the eyes to say like I'm looking at it, or if I say like I'm doing a deployment, I'll throw up a clock emoji reaction on the message to show that it's in process, and then I'll put a check mark when it's done, or a little rocket ship or something like that. So they're kind of doing some of that, but I'll be sad if this actually makes it into the actual app, because it just looks weird to me. Alright, so under the hood, this is like when I joined the channel. Under the hood, this probably is just a message that's auto sent when you join a channel. So we have to think about that. Like maybe we update our channel join logic, like in the controller, to have it send a message as the user as part of that action. Anyway, okay, let's focus. So we'll get one, and I don't even think we need a container around these. So let's do v4 in, and let's make us 20 messages that are just going to be all the same thing. All right. Now this thing is asking, let's see, this require v4 key I'm gonna get rid of, because there's certain loops where we don't need the key, there's others where we do, and we'll know whether or not that's the case. Well, I'll make that change later. Basically, it leads to you having to do like a bunch of this shit, and then like if you're looping over things that don't have unique IDs, you end up having to say for item index, and then your key is the index, and it's just weird. All I want is 20 divs. This one though, I am gonna get rid of. All right. So the structure of this, it's going to be a lot like our media object up top. So the first thing is we need to actually get out of that media object. Go down here. So we're going to have our avatar again. And this is going to be just the straight up, like if you hover, it's really hard to see, but this is just the square. So what I'm going to do is make us a white box for now with a blue circle in it, just to be able to see. So VG white, rounded, P1, and then in here, div class VG blue, rounded full with 5 high 5. Why isn't this guy showing up? Let's see if we have an error. We do. There we go. I must have had an error and it like prevented JavaScript from running after that point. Let's put a border on this just so I can see it. Yeah. Okay. All right, and then we're gonna have another div that has the author. So it's not really a heading. So it's gonna be a div that has maybe a span, the author in it, and then a span that has the time it was left. And then we'll have a paragraph is like this. Okay, so let's play around with styling. We want these to be side by side, so we'll say class flex items start space x2. Take that border off. The whole thing's going to be hover VG gray 100. We'll say slate just to match. So it's probably too strong. Let's go with 50. Yeah. Put a little bit of padding on the top and left. So say PY 2 is probably too much. Oh, that's about right. And then we basically want these avatars to line up here on this axis, so it's close enough. All right, so here we want this to be bold-ish, and then this will be, we'll say text gray 800. This will be muted, so it's a text gray like 400. Maybe it should even be a little bit smaller. And then we want some space in between them. Let's say class space x2. That MD wheelie should punch a little bit more. This is actually a good example of why you really do need the key in some of these cases. I'm having to like refresh the page every single time. Um, and it's because whenever we make a change, it's trying to replace these nodes, but they have the same ID. So it thinks there's nothing to do or whatever when it patches the DOM. So I'm not going to worry about it. We can just refresh for now. It'll go away when we actually pull in real messages. So we know this one we want to be a little bit muted. That's probably too muted. See how it like created this whole new DOM list over here? Because it didn't figure out if this was the same. So you refresh and it goes away. I'm not going to worry about making this lighter and then this. What this is like a, say a system message or something like that. Maybe whenever we make our message component, we'll end up passing that as a prop, and then you could read that off the message as like a type. It's like a status message or something like that from the user. But so oh, that's interesting. So these are gonna have tooltips that have like the emoji and the full icon. We'll do that later. That's kind of cool. I mean, really, like, you just stop here. Instead of join channel, I'll just paste a real message in there. And let's get wave Unicode just for example. Okay. You can take the border off of that avatar. Now I mouse over, you see the little haze there. So if someone else has a better avatar, it'll be a little bit bigger. This should be, we'll say 2, just to make it a little more realistic. Yeah. The actual avatar should be this size. We just need to get some real avatars in here. But anyway, yeah, we have somebody spamming the chat over and over and over. So that's kind of cool. Let's get our chat box. So some of these we're not going to do immediately. Like mentions, I think would be cool to do, because you could autocomplete based on who's in the channel. We also want the support, like you hit @ and it pulls this up, so that'll be neat. Like this little dude here is going to be like a pretty neat little component to work on. But like attachments and shortcuts, we won't launch that. Let's stick with emojis and mentions and simple sending. So like this supports scheduling messages and all that, but we'll just have a send now. We're also going to stick with just the markdown mode here. But if you just install Slack, you'll see some like formatting options like bold, italic, whatever. I don't really want to do that right now, but that's something we can do in the end. Ultimately, it ends up just writing markdown for you, and you work in a preview mode instead of text. But all right, so let's bump this down a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna leave the red there just long enough to get the box rolling and moved up above so we can see that little effect we were talking about earlier. So this will be the chat box, and We're going to say it has a background of white. It has a border. It has a big old rounded corner. And for right now, we'll set a static height on it. Let's go a little bit bigger. Maybe not that big. That's it. So our border is a little bit darker. Border gray, 500 maybe. Kind of hard to tell right now because we don't have, we've got that red flying in there. So maybe we come back to it. All right, so the next thing is who owns this padding? I'm gonna say this container owns that padding. And we'll go with that P, that 6 units of space on either side so that it lines up with everything else. I'm playing around with this to kind of see how this component behaves a little bit. Okay, so it looks like this is an input and it probably has like a max lines setting on it or whatever. So we want to make sure we reproduce that effect, that we can hit shift and this will grow up until you hit that max lines. We don't want it to grow down is the issue, because then it'd be off the page. So let's pull this up a little bit. So like I said, we can say negative margin top 2, or maybe that's all it takes. We also want to do some Z indexing here, because you see it's like, it ends up underneath parts here. So if we said like Z, for right now we'll say Z10. That might not be enough. It may not work at all, actually. So let's see, what can we think?
So take me away from here. Just take my hand and bring me away.
There we go. So I don't like these like magic values here. So this is basically setting the index to 0. I don't even think we need this anymore. Yeah. So I don't like this because we don't want to willy-nilly throw these Z indexes around. We basically want to have kind of a strategy where we think about the application in terms of planes. Like imagine popping off the page. And you want to be like, well, my baseline Z index is, and then here's all the elements that are on that plane. But then like when I click this, my modals are on a plane above that. And then any drop downs that sit inside are on a plane above that. So you kind of want all that to play well together. When you start just making shit work, it gets out of hand later. But this gives us kind of what we want. Yeah. So now we have this like it's fading behind the chat box. So let's get our input in here. Text. And so there it is by default, and we're gonna want to like control some of this. So we need to see like where this input actually is. That's wild. This is actually a That can't be a paragraph tag. This has to be like, there's an input either hit, there it is right there. They've built, we're not going to do this. They've built an input field out of a div with this content editable. So you can say content editable true on any div, and you can start typing into that div. They probably did this for like formatting reasons or something. I would imagine. Like this is part of their custom chat box component thingamabob. Yeah, we're not going to do this. It does look like the parent controls the padding here. Right? So you kind of have this thing where it's two divs stacked on top of one another, and the top one is the editor. So let's go ahead and kind of emulate that at the very least. So the input will go inside here. And then this will be like a toolbar. So then let's get a placeholder in here just so we can see things. Send a message to general. We want both of these to fill the height of it or whatever. Maybe the bottom one will be static, but we definitely want the top one to be filling the entire area. Honestly wonder like some 150. So you end up with this div, and then down below will be the static height toolbar thing. Oh look, they even give it roll toolbar. Trying to think how I want to organize this. I do know that I don't want like the outline on this. So maybe it's like outline none. Yeah. So we got that. I want some padding on there. Let's do P2. Say PY2 PX4. It's probably 3. That's what I'm really looking. Yeah. And I want this to be the full width of this div. So we'll say width full. So now this goes, and I need to make this a multi-line. So this may need to be a text area instead. Text area. Let's see how it's like scrolling now. It's unfortunate. Let's see. HTML input multi-line. If that's true. I wonder if that's true. think it's got to be a text area. All right. We'll put a border on this, or a BG, just to be able to see where it is. Let's see, like text area overflow after rows. Oh, hell no. We ain't going to use JavaScript to grow it. How to auto grow a text area. This looks super promising. This is, honestly, this is probably why they used the div, if I'm being real. Because, like, we could do the same thing, but say content editable, true. We would just have to have a, you'd have to have an element that is the placeholder, that with JavaScript you would hide after the fact, but then you can come in here and do this, right? And it would just do its thing. Now we just need to figure out how to make it grow up. And the way to do that, honestly, is probably going to be taking the height off of this. Taking the height off one of these, so let's say the height off this, and then this is now a flex parent, flex call, and this flex ones, this will be height 8, BG blue 200. And now if we type, it's still going down. Let's say HTML div grow up, not down. Make div grow up left instead of down right. Try this. So they're using absolute positioning to do that, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if there's like a flex grow direction. Probably not. Grow direction. No. I bet the the right thing to do is to like do some weird shit with absolute positioning. So like if this one were relative, we made this absolute with the bottom 0, what does it do now? Yeah, that's it. But now we need to get it to expand the wrapper or whatever. You know, unless you do something where like this styling is part of this div. Which we could do. The moment we made this content editable true, it gets really, it's gonna be funky. Like this markup is just gonna be all sorts of weird. But let's try the whole like we take the chrome off of this. I think we could still say it's rounded, but we need to like overflow hidden some stuff so that it cuts off these edges down here. Oh, we can't do that because we need it to be shown. So I think we are gonna have to do like take the rounded off here. Maybe even take the background off there. And then this one is going to be our rounded top. This one will be our rounded bottom with a border. So we can say rounded bottom large, and then the border. Right, 200. And then we could throw some padding on here. So like PY to PX3. And let's give ourselves some more room. It's enough for now. So then over here, let's get rid of this div. Oh, no, we still need that. I'm wrong. We still need that. We don't want the padding here, though, I don't think. So we could say rounded top large border. This will be border and then border top 0. Take it off there. This will be border. Nope. This one. Border and then border bottom 0. Border gray 200. Let's see. Why isn't that cutting us off? We might have to put these on our div instead. We don't need this focus anymore. We don't need the width anymore. Maybe we do need the width because this content editable. Apparently we do. We need the focus thing too. That's so weird. Alright, we need some padding on this. So we'll do the same as our other element, PY2, PX3. Send a message. Blah. So that's better. But again, like, how about for now we'll put in our static placeholder, but basically we're going to need some JavaScript to control this. The other thing I'm really interested in seeing is how you vmodel banged to a content editable div, and if that's even a thing. I have no idea. I've never done it. So here we've got this relative absolute bottom. We could take another like span, and this is our placeholder. We say absolute, and then position it like over top the other one. So what I'm not sure why it's down here. This should be relative to this. So when I say top 0, it should bring it up into, oh, I think it's because, let's get rid of the, I think it's because like the parent is actually smaller than this or something. We'll come back and do the placeholder later. I don't really, it's too late to be dealing with this shit. Content editable was already a bad idea. So we need our BG white for sure. And then down here, we need to set up our toolbar. So this looks like a simple like justify between. So we'll end up with 2 divs. This will have a send icon in it, which I don't think we have one of those in here icons. So let's see if we can find something close enough. Maybe this chat icon might be okay. An arrow might be okay. Use the mail. That's probably gonna be it. Ooh, paper airplane, and we can rotate it. That's what we'll do. Paper airplane class width 5, height 5. Rotate 90. And we'll flex shrink 0 it. Oh, close that tag there. Look at that. Perfect. While we're here, we can get rid of that BG blue. What do they do? I think, oh, they don't even have, there's no color at all. So we can just BG white. BG white. So we are gonna make this flex item center. Justify between. And then when I get this, when I get the solid, maybe that's the last thing we'll do tonight is go fix the View HeroCon package to do solid. This is the same icon; it'll just be the solid variant of it. But let's see. So that's interesting. There's a little bit of behavior there to get it looking like a button after you type, and then there'd be a send now. We'll leave it simple for now, and then we can do that later. What I do want to do is go ahead and say this is a button, so that it's, you know, it feels clickable. All right, so emoji and at. Smile. So emoji happy. So I have a button, with icon name emoji happy. And we'll do the same thing for at symbol. Okay. So there's those. I'm gonna put some space in between them. I'm not gonna do this hover stuff. That is fancy though. I like that a lot. So the first thing is we'll do space X2 between them. We need to lighten them up a little bit. So sex gray, 500 maybe, 400 maybe. It does darken up a little bit when you hover it. So we'll say hover is text gray 600. And then here we'll say, just to get the color straight first, we'll say BG gray 200, rounded P1. It's probably a little bit bigger, but we're gonna roll with it. So it's actually more like that, and then we'll do that on hover. So you look here, like we got this effect where like, since the hover is on the actual icon itself, it doesn't darken up until you go there. We want it to darken up as soon as we enter this box. So what we can do is we can use the group utility and then say when we group hover, then it should be text gray. And now it'll darken without having to actually hover over the icon. So this is the same. We're just going to use this at symbol. Right. Need to style this a little bit. Give it that same text gray. We're not going to do like the hover effect because this is going to get a special treatment. But for now, this will show like the disabled state almost. So maybe 300, 400. Yeah, 400 looks all right. This one also looks a little bit smaller. Yeah. Okay, so I think this is pretty good. We need to get it closer to the bottom, and we can adjust that with this height over here. That seems pretty good. So we still have the effect where it's behind or whatever. You can scroll up and down. This font needs to be a little bit bigger. So I think this is, we got ourselves into this, like, we're going to focus on font sizes too much before we adjusted our actual font stack. And it, shot us in the foot a bit. That's okay. We also need to come through here and do a bunch of like text colors to not have them be, actually these are good. There's text light 300. A lot of the things like text colors and bold and leading and all these things, you end up like, instead of this being a span, maybe this is like a text component, carry some props, and then you'd also have things like headings. But it's too early to get like that rigid. It's almost like we want a design system or the component library to kind of reveal itself, and then we tack it down and give each of these things different names or whatever. Let's see. Oh, T, I just saw your message. How are we doing the chat functionality for this? So there's a bunch of past broadcasts, which are, hours and hours of us kind of plugging along in an API that's going to back all of this. So we've got an Express API on the back end that we've already written functionality, like basically our basic functionality for like creating channels, logging in, or logging in, then creating channels, deleting channels, renaming channels, sending messages to channels. So what we're focused on right now, we spent a couple of streams doing all that. Now we're focused on just front end, and specifically just the markup to get everything looking like Slack. And then it's going to be a couple of days of coming back through here and just starting to wire things up to these composable functions. So definitely take a look through. I need to do a better job about organizing all the merge requests and stuff. But the end goal for this is to have all of these different MRs. They, for the most part, map to a broadcast. So you could come in here and open up like channel API and then go find the broadcast for this. And I'm going to come back through these merge requests at some point and flesh these out a lot more. So read more like a blog post about what we did during the video. We've just been having, too much fun cruising along. So I've just been focusing on work, but I really do need to come back here and shore that up a bit. But, so yeah, we're going to be using Express. So this thing has kind of a REST API setup that we've specified with an Open API spec. But then for a lot of the real-time stuff, so we'll end up with like 2 windows pulled up, and I'll send a chat. An initial iteration might be we're going to do like long polling or something like that, or maybe like your window polls for messages in your current channel. And then I want to have a stream where we bring in socket.io and use WebSockets to do kind of real-time chat. So a lot of this would be like, if you're going to build this from scratch, you would go ahead and grab something like socket.io off the shelf and just use it. I kind of want this to feel more like we're going to kind of force more iteration for educational purposes. Because that's most of the point of this isn't to build like a Slack clone. Like that, the end product almost doesn't matter. I just kind of picked Slack as an interesting project. But I wanted this to be more educational for sure. But yeah, you can go grab Stoplight Studio, pull down the project, open up the spec, and just to kind of lightly review without you having to watch hours of videos and stuff. Each of these endpoints, if say I want to create a message, I would send a post request to the messages endpoint. This operation ID will map to a controller dot function. So if you go into source API controllers, there's a messages controller here, and then here's the create function. So map to that function there, and you can kind of see the logic for how this goes. So we're going to make sure all the bodies are going to be done in Markdown when we're typing. So the front end is going to send Markdown to the back end. The front end is going to need to base64 encode that before it sends that request. It'll be received here. We do some validation. Otherwise, when they send a message, you basically just send the channel and the base64 encoded body, and that's it. So we find by resource ID the channel. Then we send our message and return that message as JSON. If we go look at, say, so this is all the backend stuff. So that's probably the most important bit. The next thing we did was wrote some, we used the View Composition API to write some composable functions to wrap our API access in the front end. And what was kind of neat about this is we can test this with Jest without having to do like full browser end-to-end tests, which is kind of convenient. So these tests are kind of like, honking thick boys. In reality, as we go further along, we'll probably split this kind of God test up into some smaller tests that are asserting different behaviors. But this reads nicely, like top to bottom, more like a story or a end-to-end narrative for the messaging API as a whole. So I, if I come down here, I log in as WAC, I create a channel, I bring in the messages composition function. and then start working with it. So our front end code is really, this is the API it's going to have. So you can imagine, like, if I come down here and type a message and hit enter, that's going to wire to a click handler that really just calls this function, and then it just kind of works. And I'll tack this message onto the end of our messages array in state. Can update messages, delete messages. So a lot of the backend stuff we've already kind of got a good grasp on. We're going to spend a few more streams doing UI and then start wiring things together a little bit. So yeah, it should be fun. So yeah, I think, tomorrow we'll play around with this content editable crap a little bit more to get like a placeholder. I'll probably go ahead and extract this into a component just to have it there. We may go ahead and start breaking this up into some components. I'm not sure. We also need to make our login screen that uses our doodle password, which before we break, I'll go ahead and put that in the empty layout so we can take a look at that real quick. So with WAC, again, we aren't going to have kind of a conventional registration process. You're basically going to go to a login screen, you'll type a username, and then you'll make a doodle, and the doodle is your password. So you have to remember the doodle you made, but then what we do is when you log in again, so the first time you log in, it'll do like a find or create. So if you don't exist, it'll just auto-register you. The second time you log in by that same username, we will compare the doodle you make to the one that's stored in the database. And if they're similar, I think it's like 95% similar, then that's a successful password. But that was one of the first things we made was kind of this doodle password component. So let me load this into our empty layout, which is going to really be our login page. So import doodle password from components, doodle password. All right, so it's been a while since I've looked at it, so we're gonna have to come back and look. I think this submits an event. Yeah. So what we'll do is have a little bit of state here. Say password is empty. And then we can say finish. Just say password equals event. And then what I want to do is we'll render this out to see the data URI that it's set to, and then we'll also try to use it in an image right below that. And then instead of password, I'm just going to go ahead and call this data URL or URI. So now let's go back over to app and we'll switch the layout to empty. Right, so here I can doodle, and then that should update the data URI. We've probably got an error or something, or I didn't set it up right. Property password access render is not defined on instance, so we've still got a password somewhere. Or it's just not up to date. Yeah, there we go. It just wasn't up to date. Let's do something like, let's get all this looking a little bit more put together. Center, justify, center. That's odd. Whatever, this is good enough. So now if I draw here, it'll update that data URI, and then it redraws the image using the same data URI. So this long thing right here ends up being the password that's sent to the backend and is what's stored in the database. So, not going to say, most secure thing in the world or how you should build an app or whatever, but we wanted something a little fun and non-conventional. I think we also had, like, in the original stream, there was like a refresh button here where you could click it, and then we've got, like, the Doodle password has currently 2 different backgrounds you can pick. So that's kind of an extra factor is, you'll come through here and pick a personalized picture, and then you doodle on that using parts. The idea is use parts of the picture as a reference. So maybe you want to be like, I'm going to give Earth, a smiley face or something. And then the next time you put this in, it's got to be somewhat similar, right? So, like, this should fail the password check whenever we send it. So we'll see how that goes. But that's what's going on there. Switch this back. So yeah, tomorrow we'll wrap up some of this and then go hit our login page and get all that straight. And right after that, it's probably a good time to start looking at bringing in a router and actually log in. When you log in, it switches you over to the application layout. And we can probably go ahead and start putting together like basic chat functionality. Something we'll have to go back to pretty soon is I'm going to need to add some workflow options to set up MySQL for our pipeline. It's not called pipeline, for our GitHub Action stuff, so that these tests can start passing again. The only reason these are failing is because the test now depends on having a database server available, and there isn't one. So yeah, that's something I'll probably do off stream and get all that straight. I do want to I want to host this somewhere. I'll probably put it on like a really cheap DigitalOcean droplet or something, just to have, a hosted version of it we can all play with, and then as we merge requests, we'll just continuously deploy out to that. That might actually be a neat little stream to do. It's more like an ops stream. Let's go ahead and put that in there. It's an idea. There you go. It's gonna be cheap, so I don't want to throw a lot of money at it. So let's see. We got this for the most part. I forgot about this. So here, like this modal and modal drop down. It may actually be better. We'll do the login form tomorrow, and then we'll wrap up UI stuff. Go ahead and bring in headless UI and get these set up. So we'll basically make our own modal and our own drop-down components, but they'll be implemented via headless UI. So all the behavior of the drop-down, like click outside and escape to close and all that mess, that'll be all them. But we can get some of these set up, and then we should be good to go to actually start plugging stuff together. Once we get a end-to-end clone kind of working, and you can chat and join different channels and move between channels and all that, I think it's gonna get a little more interesting because we can kind of scope this stream as a specific improvement we're gonna make kind of across the stack. Like, for example, channels don't currently have descriptions, so we could come in and be like, okay, we're gonna add the ability to edit channel descriptions, and that's gonna be make this modal. Make endpoints for editing the description, add the description to the channels model, all that kind of stuff. So, kind of looking forward to that. Seems like a lot of the streams up to this point kind of been a lot of all over the place. So, I feel like once we get this kind of walking skeleton straight, then we can kind of really focus in and have very specific and targeted streams, not ones that run for an hour and 42 minutes. But all right, well, I'm gonna get all this committed and pushed up. Put a little more description, some links in the pull request, and then I'm gonna head to sleep. I'll be back tomorrow a little bit later, probably be about 11 o'clock or so, and we'll get started again. Anyway, y'all have a good one. I'll talk to you later.